You are listening to the On Purpose Podcast. What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose Podcast, where you know it's our privilege and our pleasure to show up with you each and every week, ready to go, ready to bring some energy, some excitement, some content that makes you question things, maybe lights a little fire inside of you and get you going again. So, I want to thank you for being here and being part of our community for almost 6 years now. You realize in March, just next month, that'll be our 6th year of doing this podcast each and every week. And I can't thank you enough for being here and making it all possible. So this week, I am excited to sit down and welcome to the show Jessica Flores. She has dedicated her career to supporting law enforcement officers as they transition into civilian life, sharing valuable insights, resources, and success stories based on her own experiences. And I think that's something we don't realize a lot of times is whether it's law enforcement or a dream job of any kind or just something you stumble into, there's going to be these transition points in our life. And a lot of times they're scary, they're uncertain, and we're not sure how to handle them. And that's what this week's episode is going to talk about. We're going to dive into Jessica's story. We're going to explore the challenges and triumphs that faced her as she rediscovered herself that you can apply to yourself as you're looking to create a new chapter in your life. Um, so think about that. Even though some of this stuff may be police related, police is universal to me for work right now, right? Like job related, like what am I doing? What activities am I in? Do I want to rediscover myself? Am I giving myself permission to move on? And if not, why not? So let's listen in this week to what Jessica Flores has to share with us. I hope you guys enjoy the interview. This episode is brought to you by Brenda Rice, a dedicated local realtor in Northern Colorado. Having known Brenda for over 20 years, I can vouch for her hard work and dedication while watching her transition from a police career into real estate. Brenda has teamed up with Shelley Borman from Loan Depot to create a tailored first responder program, making home buying in Northern Colorado easier and more affordable than ever. Special incentives are available to our listeners. For more details, reach out to Brenda at Brenda Rice Co. Realtor on Instagram or click the link in our show notes. Jess, my newest friend, welcome to the On Purpose Podcast. How are you today?
I am good, Jerrod, and thank you so much for having me. It's so weird to talk to somebody else named Jerrod. That's my brother's name and my brother-in-law's name.
Oh, that's hilarious. Wow, you got a lot of Jareds in one
You
family.
all three spell it different too.
Yeah, no, that never gets spelled the same way.
No, not at all.
No, that's funny. 3 Jareds in one family. Well, I got to tell you, I think you guys might be blessed.
I would agree with that.
Jess, it's an honor to have you on the show. And before we even get going, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for you having the courage to share your story, for using your voice. And you may not even know this, but the way I found you or you came across my radar was that a good friend of mine who her dream was to be in law enforcement, and she tested multiple times and would come up short and go home and make improvements, which many people do, right, to get into this job. And then after only a few years on the job in which she was excelling, she was a detective, she was loving life, she got involved in a bad car crash. It was not her fault. And their career was taken from her. And I know she went through a lot of what we're going to talk about, that rediscovery and what's next. But I just want to tell you thank you that your voice is one she's been going to as she processes. And while we might not always know people are listening and we're making a difference, I want to make sure you know today that people are listening and you are making a difference.
Thank you very much. That means a lot because you're right. We get into law enforcement and we help people all day long and we almost never get to see the outcome of what that is. And it's the same thing out here. And even thank you for saying being courageous and using your voice. That was something that until recent years I was not willing or able to do. And it's been a journey of self-discovery, that's for sure. And now you can't shut me up about it.
Hey, that's good. What was it? What was the biggest thing you'd ever come before you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna throw this out there?
Man, I honestly think it was a lot of inferiority, maybe like
Mm.
feeling like I was a cop and that made me feel on top of the world and like I was somebody. And then all of a sudden I wasn't a cop and I had no clue who I was. I had given so much to that I didn't know who Jessica was or who she was deep down. And then I had been out for so long when I started talking about what happened in my career, like my actual career, the transition itself, and then things since then. And I was like, who am I to talk about this? Like imposter syndrome kicked in huge, or man, I've been out for so long, is it even still relevant? Or um, again, who am I to talk about this? And when I started talking about it, the ideal person I was wanting to talk to was other cops who had lost their career like I had. That was the idea of who I wanted to speak to. And as I started sharing more and as more layers started shedding, people were reaching out that were like command level people, and people were reaching out who had retired, and people were reaching out who were still on the job mid career about the time I lost mine, kind of 8 to 11 years. And like, Jess, I can't do it for another 12 years. Like, I can't do it for another 20 years. I can't. And I was like, wow, like, what is this? And again, when I was I've been out for 9 years, basically next month. Nobody talked about leaving law enforcement. That was not the norm. If somebody left, they basically just didn't show up the next day, and you're like, "Where's so and so?" After like a month or two, and you're like, "No, nobody knew anything. Like nobody was
Yeah.
leaving for family. Nobody was leaving for mental health. Nobody." I feel like I had a handful of people maybe that I saw get hurt on the job and have to leave, but nobody was talking about it. And definitely nobody was talking about what the actual transition was like and living not as a cop anymore. So I think, again, inferiority, imposter syndrome, that was all there. And then as I started sharing and people started reaching out, maybe not in comments, and a lot of people get tied up in that because I was sharing it on social media. If the likes aren't there or the comments aren't there, that doesn't mean they're not in your DMs talking to you and being like, holy shit, I was thinking that myself. And I'm sorry I cuss sometimes if that's not
That's all
supposed to be
good. Yeah.
when I get really worked up. But no, when those DMs started coming in and people were like, oh my gosh, you're speaking to me, or oh my gosh, I had this experience, and they're literally word vomiting their entire story, you're like, okay, wow, we're on to something here. Let's just keep going and see what happens.
No, for sure. And like you had mentioned that you didn't see anybody leave for mental health. You didn't see anybody leave for family. The reality is they were leaving for all those reasons. We just didn't know it because nobody talked about it. And you're 100% right. Law enforcement is notoriously hard on people that want to leave short of fulfilling the career.
We're hard on anybody that wants to better themselves because we get this like scarcity mindset that if they better themselves, they're going to leave and oh, we're going to have to pick up their workload or whatever it is. And that is something I recognize looking backward.
Yeah.
We settle for mediocrity on the job far too often. Like you're the bad guy almost if you are trying to be better for your family, be better for yourself, be there for your family. Like you're the outcast, if you
Mhm.
will.
No, 100%. All right. Before we get too far into this, I got to warm you up. Like, I know you just had your own workout, but now I got some mental gymnastics I'm
I'm
bringing you.
already sweating. Bring it
All
on.
right, here we go. You ready for your warm up?
Hmm.
Here we go. You get to
Do I get a
choose.
warm-up song or what?
Yeah, you want an intro song? What would be your intro song? That's one of your warm ups. What intro would you come out to?
Man, I have used the song Unstoppable by Sia in workout like posts or videos online for years now, and I think that that's almost like a mantra. Like just try to stop me and you're not going to be able to.
I love it. Do you actually know what my walkout song was? Did you actually know I was an MMA fighter and I had a legit walkout song?
I'm going to be very honest. I did not know that, but that is badass, and I would love to know what your song was.
My song was Aloe Black's The Man.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I feel like there's so many good options out there. Right now, I use Legends Are Made. If you follow
Oh,
me on
yeah.
social media, you see that song, and it just that hits different, man. When you're in a bad
Yeah,
mood or something and you're like, "Hey, I'm about to go work out," and you hear this is how legends are made, bring
that's
it on.
true. Be a legend. All right. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset
Ooh,
all
why?
day. Ugh, I hate mornings. I was a dog watch night shift officer my entire career, other than being a detective, and that's where the fun is at. I like to be awake all day and then just enjoy the sunset, the sun going down. The colors are gorgeous, especially if you're by an ocean. Dear Lord, you can't beat it.
Mm. Favorite book?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. I am currently reading Let Them by Mel Robbins, and it's quickly becoming one of those favorite books. But two, I'll give you two. I can't pick one. Two that changed the trajectory of things for me when I started this personal growth journey about 2 years out of law enforcement was The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and really talking about the power of those daily habits, the small ones, consistent habits every day will lead to big results, changed the game for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to have this big thing that I did and
Hmm.
feel proud and accomplish that, or that's when I'm going to get a result. No, it's these small, consistent actions of the mundane things that you don't even think about, making your bed, adding a step onto that each day, type of thing. And then Rachel Hollis, Girl Wash Your Face was also out around that time. And for some reason in the moment in that season of life, I just really needed what she talked about in that book. And then her second book was Girl Stop Apologizing. And as someone who was a people pleaser and apologized a majority of my life, that one hit the nail on the head with so many different things. And it changed. I was like, yeah, I don't have to apologize for X,
No.
Y, or Z at all. I don't have to apologize for being me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, a quote you live by.
If they can do it, so can I.
Oh, where'd you come across that one at?
I don't even know if that's a legit quote from someone,
It's good enough
but
for me.
it's the mantra that I use, and it came from a direct sales opportunity I was involved in, actually, and being surrounded by a community of women willing to just go for their dream. One, who had dreams in the first place, and two, be willing to take action and do it. And the first time I had come up with like, hey, this is what I want to do, and somebody was like, then why not do it? And I was like, well, X, Y, or Z, every limiting belief you can think of. And they're like, okay, well, so and so's doing that, right? Like you look up to them. They are proof that it's been done. So therefore, it's something you can do. It's out there. You can do it, but you've got to put in the work and you've got to do it your way.
I love it. All right, you get to have dinner with one person. They can still be with us or may have passed. Who would you have dinner with and what would you want to ask them?
Few people there. I'll go with my grandpa. My grandpa is the only other cop that was in my family, and he died 6 months after retirement. And the memories I have from my childhood, I was only 10 when he died, are so vivid in my mind still and so darn happy. And he was the first, his funeral was the first look into law enforcement that I ever got and really kind of showed me what it's like to be something, part of something bigger than yourself. At 10, I didn't understand what that meant until I became a cop. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is what it was about. Um, but I would love to sit down with him and one, thank him, and two, get to share about my career. We both retired. Well, he retired as a sergeant. I didn't get to retire, but I had to leave, and I was a sergeant. So we were both Sergeant Reed, and I would just love to reminisce with him about what that was like and what it's been like since he left us.
Mm. And he made it 6 months into retirement before he passed.
Yeah, he had horrible health. I want to say my dad had told me his first heart attack was in like his early 40s, maybe late 40s, and he had diabetes. And he was 61 when he passed. I mean, he was not old by any means, any stretch of the imagination. He was an active guy as far as like getting in the pool with us. I'm pretty sure he used to play sports and stuff, but didn't make it. His body gave out because he didn't take the time to take care of himself.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest with you. That was one of the reasons I left law enforcement at the age I did is because I had seen that story play out too many times.
It's far too common, far too common.
People give their whole life serving others only to have lose years off the back end of theirs, and I wasn't willing to trade it. So, yeah, that's my hope with people like yourself, people like myself that are speaking out and telling cops it's okay to move on and do something different. And it's great to rediscover yourself. It's good to have dreams. That
Yep.
we change some of that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not an all or nothing. That's a mindset that I had to lose, and it's one that cops have instilled like no other, but it's not all or nothing. You can still rediscover yourself and be on the job. You can reconnect to your original why, and maybe it looks a little bit different now and still move forward with that. But if it is, oh yeah, I think this chapter is closing. That's okay. Like that is okay to admit, that is okay to move on from, and you need to know that it's okay to move on from that. This is your life. You only get one of them, so you might as well make it what you wanted. These other people who are going to talk shit, one, they're not going to be there in your life after law enforcement, and two, they're not going to pay your bills. And three, they're not going to be the one waiting at home for you like your family is.
I love it. You know, it'd be even better than that, Jess, is if we took what you said and we knew it was okay to have our own dreams, but then we
Mhm.
actually empowered those around us to have their dreams and we supported them instead of criticizing them.
100%. And I will tell you, I've said this on one other podcast. I can't remember where it was, but I didn't even know how to dream, if I'm being honest, until I got out of law enforcement. I surrounded myself with that community and that direct sales opportunity of people who were dreaming. And I was like, oh, what do you mean I could want that? What do you mean I could want? What do you mean like I could wake up one day and like what does your vivid dream life look like? Like don't think analytically like your cop brain wants to do and be like, well, how am I
Mm.
going to get that house and how am I going to get that? Don't worry about that. What is your dream? And then who do you have to become to make that dream come true? Because you are that person. You can become that person. And it was life changing to learn how to dream and think that it was okay to think bigger and want more or want better while still being grateful for everything I have.
All right. T- Share that with me because I think that's something people get caught up in a lot is, man, if I want more in my world, it means I'm not grateful where I'm at. And I argue all the time, no, you can be both. I can be grateful for where I am today, but know that there is greater possibility in the future.
Yes, and I think that's just society's norms that have been placed on us for so long. And I blame my cop career for a lot of it. But man, after I left that, societal norms gets a big middle finger from me. And I'm just like, I will do the exact opposite of what society is telling me I need to do. But yes, there is duality that can exist. You can be incredibly grateful or thankful for what you have and be like, but no, like there's more. But I know there's more potential inside. You feel that. Everyone feels that inside. That's why it's there in the first place. Like that's not placed on your heart by accident. Like it's there to guide you and drive you. And you can be like, okay, cool. Well, these experiences led me to here. And now I'm in this season right now. What can I do today and in this season to then prepare me for what I'm saying I want? And oftentimes we don't have somebody pushing us to that what we want part. You have to surround yourself with people who are doing that when you're stuck around everybody that's like, oh my God, this sucks. And I'm just gonna 17 more years of this, man, and 12 more years of this. How are you supposed to grow through that? You're just
Yeah.
surrounded by it and you want to fit in. You want to be one of the guys. So you're going to stick to saying and talking and acting like that when no, there's this whole community over here that's talking about how do you get to there and how do we get there? And let's go together. Let's grow together. You got to get uncomfortable.
The Tactical Harmony podcast is hosted by Rebecca Fitzsimmons, a former NCIS special agent turned holistic leadership coach and mindset strategist. Drawing on nearly 20 years of experience empowering high achieving professionals to break barriers and lead with purpose, Rebecca shares tried and true strategies and actionable insights to help you excel in today's fast paced world. If you're ready to lead with impact and create harmony in the chaos, the Tactical Harmony podcast is for you. Available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or check it out at tacticalharmony.com or in the show notes below. What was the scariest part for you when you gave yourself permission to dream?
I don't know that there was a scary part necessarily. I found it far more exciting and exhilarating and freeing than scary. I laugh when I use the word scary at anything anymore because I look back at my career and I'm like, that was some scary shit. That was some situations that nobody should have to be in. That was scary. But when people talk about like showing up on social media and being scared or like I'm like, yes, I was scared at one point to show up on social media. I mean, like terrified. Would not do a live video, would not talk. Like I would post something, typically somebody else's words or phrases or whatever. I would hide behind filters. And if you go to my Just Flores page on Instagram, it's my personal page. You can scroll back. I started this growth journey because of a fitness journey in 2018, February 20th of 18. You can see like all the different shifts and like all the different pivots that Jessica made over this past 7 years on social media, where layers of the onion were being peeled back, where masks were coming off, where I was finally able to find my voice and show up and not give two shits who saw it, who had a comment about it, who had an opinion. Because as Rachel Hollis, the book author I mentioned earlier, said, other people's opinions of you are none of your business. And the second I could embrace that as a old people pleaser, the game changed.
Right. So that is that fear, right, of throwing it out there and, oh my God, what are people going to say? Are they going to be mean to me? The reality is, who cares?
Who cares? Literally, who cares?
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. Before we get to that dreaming part, talk me through the process of, so you're on the job and you get hurt,
Hmm.
right? Which happens to so many people. And I think that's one of the downsides in law enforcement. We train for the ultimate. Like cops go to work and they go to training knowing they may not make it home,
Yeah.
right? We may die.
Yep.
But a lot of times where we drop the ball is training for what if you go home, but you're in between. You're
Hmm.
not who you used to be, but you're still alive. Because
Yeah.
that shit's happening every day, right? You're
Yeah.
always changing. Your mind's changing, your heart's changing. So talk me through that process for you when, the injury, the surgery, and then realizing this is coming to an end.
Yeah. So I did my first 4.5 years at I'll just say it, I don't care. The Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. Went through the academy, got out on the street, loved. Loved patrol work at midnights in the inner city. But by the end of that 4 years, and I made a post about this the other day, like I didn't even recognize myself when I looked in the mirror. I had no idea who that was that I became. It definitely wasn't a version of myself that I was proud of anymore. Um, I lost sight of that why I initially became a cop to be a voice for those who couldn't or wouldn't speak for themselves. I lost who I was. I was dealing with an emotionally, mentally abusive relationship of my own and projecting that out onto people on the street. And finally, after I got shot at there, 3.5 years in, about 3 years in, um, and I had my department respond the way they did, I was like, okay, well, I knew the community didn't love us. That was something I could like put aside. Realizing my department also didn't care because I didn't discharge my firearm back because there was no clear target. That was a slap in the face. And I was like, you know what? I don't maybe think that this is it. So I left. I took about a year off. I became a CNA to see if I wanted to go to nursing school. And dear Lord, I did not want to be stuck in a hospital all day, every day. As much as I had death surround me on the street, watching people come into a hospital with a headache or a stomach ache, and all of a sudden they've got a cancer diagnosis and 3 months to live, like I I could not take it, especially since I was now part of their care team and taking care of them and taking care of their family. And it was a disaster. And I still felt called to be a cop. And I was like, okay, fine, Lord, I'll give in. So I went back. I went back to a smaller department. I did about a year and a half on patrol. I did a year and a half detective, which was my ultimate career goal. All I wanted to do was be a detective. That's why I became a cop. But about a year and a half into that, there was an opening for sergeant. I And it felt weird because I was very confident in my ability to test for sergeant and become a sergeant. Like I was very confident in my ability from having the big city experience and now the detective experience, and having been there for almost 4 years, learning their way of doing things. I felt very confident, but it felt weird to be like, I'm confident. There's, 12 other people, three of which have leader supervisor experience, and like, okay, I put in and I got it. And I was like, well, holy crap, good, good on you. I got promoted, but I had been dealing with a wrist slash hand injury while I was a detective. But it didn't really matter because you're pretty safe when you're a detective. You're usually
Yeah.
in the office or you're just doing some follow-ups, and it doesn't often or as often go bad. So I just kind of whatever, I'll wear a brace, it's fine, it is what it is. Well, when you get promoted, you go back to patrol. That's just how it works. And so I was still wearing my brace. I would rip it off on the way to a call so nobody would see, not the people I worked with, they saw it, but like so no community member would see
Yeah.
it or think, ooh, easy target, ooh, let's get her. And I wasn't exactly not a hands-on person. So even as a sergeant, we were a small department. It was like me and four other officers typically. So you're just another cop at that point. So I would rip it off. And it got to the point where even just reaching for my gun and the way you have to move your hand to grab it and unholster it, I couldn't break the snap and like grab my gun and hold it the way I needed to because
Mm.
of whatever was going on in my hand and wrist. So I'm like, okay, well, if that's going to be a problem, then I'll finally go get this looked at. The doctor was like, hey, you need a surgery. It's more like a scope to clean these things out, but you'll be good as new. Usually like 3 months recovery. I'm like, okay. He couldn't do it, so he referred me to somebody else. That doctor was like, oh, yeah, about 3 months, you'll be good as new, blah, blah, blah. I was like, let's just get it done then, because I'm over this for about the past year and a half, 2 years. Okay. Well, we had surgery. And about 3 months later, still wasn't good. About 6 months later, still not good. All the PT, all the occupational therapy. I'm like, can I get like a second opinion on this? And he was like, and this was not a work comp injury. Like, I think it happened at work from all the writing and typing as a detective. The department was not hearing any part of that. So, is what it is. Got the second opinion. That doctor was like, I mean, they did what they could. If I go back in there, your hand is just so small that if I nick a nerve, you're going to lose all feeling in your hand. So it was either deal with the pain and lack of mobility and function, or lose complete feeling of your dominant hand. And that didn't sound enjoyable at all. And I was like, I've dealt with it for 2 years already. Like I might as well just keep dealing with it. And so I didn't do the second surgery. And 9 years later, here I am, and I still deal with lack of mobility, lack of function, lack of grip strength. And it sounds so lame because, like you said, we prepare to die or we prepare for these
Hmm.
significant injuries, not your freaking wrist or hand giving out and not being able to grab a gun anymore or grab a suspect anymore. And it's the looks and the conversations that you hear about you because of that. That was a hard part to deal with because you
Hmm.
look mostly fine, but a crucial body part isn't functioning the way it should, which would endanger the lives of myself or anybody else that I was around should I need to use that gun. And I could not bear with that. So I had to turn in my resignation.
How long after that first surgery did you end up having to walk away from the career?
Surgery was in February, I believe the 26th, and I turned in resignation November, I believe 11th.
It's almost a year.
Almost a year. And during that year, there was not one check in from my department. I was the one checking in, like after doctor's appointments or things like that. Like, hey, here's what they said. Hey, here's what we're doing. Hey, this is still this. Um, so that obviously felt very crappy. Like, hey, I'm one of your sergeants and nobody's out here reaching out, but that's fine. You just kind of learn to deal with it. But even through that 8 or 9 month period, I didn't think it was over. Like clearly
Mm.
it felt like I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I still didn't prepare. I still didn't go out and try to get certifications or find a new job or anything like that. I just was holding on to every bit of this can't be over. I'm only 31 years old.
Right. And you said something just there. It's interesting. You said that's kind of the way it is, right? Nobody checks on you. But I would challenge our community, whether you're in law enforcement or not, if you are leading people, if you are in a position to impact the lives of others, it's never all right to not check on them,
100%.
ever,
100%.
right? You got a kid that's going through something, check on them. You got a teammate, you check on them. You got a family member, check on them. Like it's never all right to leave the people that you have an opportunity to impact their life daily. And all it takes is a simple just how you doing today? A text, a phone call, a quick email.
And like I said, there was a lack of leadership is what I saw, and that's why I put in for sergeant, even though that was never a career goal. And I didn't have an example of what I wanted as a sergeant. Like I never had that. So I was that one that came in and got all the eye rolls because I'm like, here's a form I would love for you guys to fill out that tells me like your expectations of me as your supervisor. I want to know what your career goals are. I want to know if you have a family, like what's your birthday, because I love to celebrate birthdays.
Yeah.
All of these different things. I never had that throughout my career. And I was fine with the eye rolls because I got to celebrate my people every time there was a celebration. I got to um, buy them lunch or dinner because all of a sudden I am making some kind of decent money. And back then is nothing like what they make now. But I loved being able to do that for my people and make them feel seen, make them feel heard, make them feel like they mattered and the work that they were doing mattered.
Which is ultimately why we have the issues we have in law enforcement because people over the course of the duration of their career don't feel like what they do matters anymore.
Yep. And we lose sight of our why. We lose sight of why we're doing things. Oftentimes nowadays, we're just chasing the next promotion so that we can get that bigger bump so that our last 3 years are higher and our retirement looks better that we might not ever reach. Like it's a consistent downfall. And unfortunately, we've seen where I just want that money. So we're getting people padding their resume and their wallets, getting promoted who don't give a shit about anybody behind them and helping them grow into the person that could then take their spot when they get the next one. And it's detrimental for sure.
Yeah, no, it 100% is. And the sad thing is it doesn't have to be that way. We could do
No.
so much better, right? Talk to me about the day you decided I'm done fighting this battle?
Yeah, I wish there was like a day, but I mean, mine was kind of, I don't want to say my hand was forced, but my now husband was moving out of state to work at another department near his hometown. And we decided like we're gonna be together. Like this is the life we're living. I've been fighting this for however long it's been at this point, 8 months or whatever. Like I guess this is maybe that final nail in the coffin, if you will, of clearly things are leading this way because we weren't sure if he was gonna get that job or not. Well, he ended up getting it, so I kind of felt like, okay, here's the nudge. And we were moving, and I was like, okay, well, I guess we're freaking done. And then that is when it sank in like, oh shit, you're not going to be a cop anymore. Wow. And that was, I thought I had done everything right to not be just a cop. I thought I had kept, workout routines and friends outside of law enforcement and had a healthy routine over here at home. And lo and behold, nope. When you lose it, that's literally all you can think about.
Is that where you found yourself thinking about it all the time?
Oh, yeah, it was. And then that's all I could see myself as. It's all I ever wanted to do. So I literally, when I said I didn't dream before, like I didn't dream. My dream was to become a detective, and it was to be those um, detectives like you look up to on TV, as dumb as that is, but like people who are that good at their job, even if it's fake, like you wanted to be that person and be that voice. And when you're driven by such a calling and a purpose, and it is suddenly ripped away, whether your choice or not, it sure didn't feel like a choice, but when it's ripped away, literally the whole life you had planned for yourself is gone. And so many of us get into this career thinking 20, 30 years down the road, this is it. Like we don't even take time to look at where else we could go or what else we could do. It's this. And we're notorious for like black and white, and here's the path. I'm going to stay on that. And then I had to realize like, oh crap, well, that's literally not going to happen. I'm 31 years old though, and I've got a lot of life left to live, hopefully, and I got a lot of work life left that I have to work. Like bills don't stop because you get hurt.
Right.
So, yeah, and then as you apply for job after job after job and get rejected after rejected after rejected, maybe because you have no college education or whatever it is, and it doesn't matter you had 10 years in law enforcement, it doesn't matter that you led a team, it doesn't matter any of that. Nobody out here cares that you were a cop. It was like, wow, okay, I guess I'm worthless then. And wow, I've got no hope. Like what am I supposed to do? I'm just supposed to be miserable the rest of my life. And you get in some very dark places where you don't, sorry, my elbow on my table. You don't even see your own worth anymore. But and then you're projecting that out there whether you're trying to or not. Like that's the vibe you're giving off and nobody else, how is anybody else supposed to see your worth or give you a chance?
Mm. Yeah, that's so interesting. I'll share with you that when I left law enforcement, it probably took 2 or 3 years to really reset personality wise, to decompress. And I was running our training academy for the last 8 years or so. So I wasn't even on the street anymore, right? So
Mhm.
I was already kind of in process of being in a more civilian role, but it takes a while. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves that grace to work through that.
Yeah. And there, I mean, like I said earlier, there was no example of what that could or should look like. So that, I mean, I remember Googling, like, I'm not a cop anymore. What do I do? Or like, what jobs do cops get after they leave? Or like resources for cops who leave. Like, there was nothing. There was crickets on Google, and now there's not, thank God. But there were crickets, and it was like there's nobody to talk to about this. Again, nobody was talking about it. Even even your friends and family don't understand. One, because they weren't in the cop role, and if you have not served, you don't know what it is like. And none of them had been through the transition. So like it was almost like a suck it up and move on. Like, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that, but that's just not how this works, unfortunately. So you do have to give yourself some grace. You do have to take the time and do that soul searching, that uncomfortable figuring out who the heck you are part. But yeah, I mean, I sat in that depressive, funky, like, let me just take whatever job will pay my bills space for 2 years before I started that fitness journey, and the rest is history. Like that fitness journey changed my life in 90 days.
And what was your journey? What specifically did you do?
I joined Beachbody because I had been watching somebody online do this fitness program and get these results for herself and so many other people. And I was just sitting on the couch, like kind of going to the gym if I was there, but I had no plan necessarily. So I wasn't getting results. I definitely was not watching nutrition. And again, my grandpa was dead at 61 years old. I was 31 at the time, well, 33 at the time I started that journey. So I was more than half his age. My dad had diabetes as well. My dad had heart issues as well. And I was like, all right, well, I gotta freaking do something. Nobody's coming to save me at this point. Like, it's on me if I want to see change. And thankfully, I have that ability. When I finally get sick and tired of my own shit, I will do whatever I need to do to get to wherever I need to go. And yes, it was expensive at the time and I didn't necessarily have it, but I was like, I got to make it work. So I signed up. I canceled like my Pandora radio. I canceled the Sirius XM in my car. I canceled all those little boxes you can sign up for that come monthly and make you happy. Like I didn't need any of that because it wasn't making me happy. I was still freaking miserable. And I knew that taking care of myself and making myself a priority was going to finally get me where I needed to be. So I signed up. I started it's an 80-day workout program with some rest days in there, but only one, one a week. And part of that was being put into an accountability group. And at the time I joined, it was right around 900 or so. I think by the time I left that group, it was over 1,000 for sure. But this huge group, obviously 900 women were not showing up for themselves every day, but there was a handful of us who did and encouraged each other. There were people further ahead in the journey that I could look up to and be like, I see them. I see them showing up with no excuses. I see them getting the results. I
Yeah.
see them doing the work. And then there was a group of us who started the same day I did. And so we were able to like set the pace with each other and keep encouraging each other, like, no, girl, did you do your workout today? And then there were, once we were kind of in the middle of the program, the new people were coming in and we were getting to lend that hand backwards and be that example and that role model and like, oh yeah, don't do this or hey, do this or you're struggling with this. I did too, and this is what helped me. Um, and I had never been around supportive women ever. That was not an example I had in my life from like life in general, or definitely not at the police department. So I remember looking at them and being like, you guys are freaking aliens. Like, who are you and why do you like each other so much? But it was the most encouraging thing, and it was exactly what I needed in that moment to get myself to a better place. And like I said, in 90 days, like I looked in the mirror to take my progress photos for the end of the program and I just burst into tears. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't talk. I called my coach and I was like, oh my God. My mind was so different. I had proven to myself that I could do and fight through whatever I needed to. And then obviously the physical transformation was in and of itself mind blowing. But I was proud of myself for the first time since being a cop. And that was 2 years later.
Yeah. That's so important that we do challenge ourselves and we put
Oh, you
ourselves
got to.
in positions we don't have all the answers and we don't know the outcome, but we just got to keep showing up.
Yeah. And then that February 20th will be 7 years that I've been showing up every single day for myself.
And how is that tied into your transition for your perspective and the purpose and led you to where you're at now?
Yeah, making yourself a priority is key. And for the longest time, it's one of those societal norms like put other people first, especially as helpers and as cops. Like, we're there to serve other people. We're there to be there for other people. We're there to take their pain. We're there to do all these things. No, you've got to take care of you. If you're not taken care of, you cannot take care of other people. And people always use you can't pour from an empty cup. That's one of them. People use the oxygen mask thing. You got to put it on yourself first in order to help the next person. Like, there's so many examples in life of no, you've got to take care of yourself and realizing that doing that isn't saying me first, it's saying me too. I'm going to
Mm,
care about myself also so I can better take care of you. If you're in a shit show of a place, how are you going to help anybody get out of a shit show of a place? You're not. You're just going to sit there and be miserable together. And that's what we've all done in not all, that's what several of us did within our career. And so now I get to help people see that it's not selfish to put yourself first. Putting yourself first actually opens up the door to so many different opportunities that you probably would have never had before because you're coming and showing up as a better version of yourself.
yeah. No, I did a whole episode on being selfish is being selfless, right?
Yeah.
Putting myself first is how I help you because I'm no good to you, Jess, showing up at half of my capacity.
Yeah. And I even have a graphic on my phone and I haven't shared it yet because I'm like, how do I even say that? And I'm just gonna, I guess, bust it out here. But it's a blue line and it's self, and then service is down below the line because we're taught in this career that it's service over self.
Yeah.
And I just don't agree with that anymore. You've got to be yourself first, and then you can serve better.
So where in the journey did you discover this new purpose that you were going to be the one that creates a platform to have honest and real conversations to help the next generation of folks or the group before us, even that was ahead of us that decided to get out? When did you say, wait a second, I can use what I went through to help others?
Yeah, so that was, I believe it was March of 22, so that would have been 6 years out. I always confused if it's 21 or 22, but I'm pretty sure it was March of 22, and I was working one of those purposeless jobs that I talked about earlier, and I was just miserable, but I had made a friend with one of our clients, this little old lady who was like 75 years old, and I just freaking adored her and her gumption and her just don't take shit from anybody attitude. And so we started going to lunches together and we were talking about how I really didn't love the job and I didn't know what I could do. And she was asking, and I was like, people always say a coach. I should be a coach. And they've told me that for years. And I was like, a coach of what? Like, I was a beach body coach, sure, but like, that wasn't really coaching. It was like, sure, you're on this program. I'm going to run an accountability group. I'm going to help you through this fitness journey, sure. But there was no like life coaching involved in that or like anything outside of just the fitness aspect. I was like, okay, well, and then I had another journey where I was helping um other teammates get confident showing up on camera and social media and understanding that yes, you may work for or partner with this company that sells this product and you're showing up and becoming your own brand, but you've got to stop with all these nonsense things that they're teaching you to do and you've got to be yourself first and you've got to focus on people first and then the product. Who are the people coming to you? What help do they need? What problems do they have? How can you solve them? And then you can suggest a product if you have a product or be like, well, I don't have that product for you or that service. This does. And that makes you more knowledgeable and more trustworthy. So, anyways, I had done those things and I was like, I don't know who the hell I would coach. And she's telling me about a CEO transition coach who basically helps people not be a CEO anymore. They just
Yeah.
like go back to living their normal life. They're no longer in the boardroom, but they've got to learn how to be normal at home and like not boss people around and like have their family hate them. So I was like, oh my God, I can help cops who lost their career. Like the initial thought for next shift came from that lunch, and I can help cops who lost their career. That was the initial like light bulb ding, ding, ding. Oh my gosh. And then I was like, okay, how? How do I do that? And I had thankfully again those communities around me where they're like, Jessica, the how does not matter. Like the why behind what you're doing is what matters. And who you have to be to make that happen is what matters. The how will figure itself out. And I was like, okay. So I raced home from work. I just found the notebook the other day of where I had like all these law enforcement terms I could think of. And somehow through that list, I was like, next shift. Okay, I love that. I'm a very visual person. I have to have like a logo to look at or something to like drive me. So I came up with that. I came up with a logo. I came up with a form that I could send out to people I knew who had left the job for whatever reason. And there was about 15 or 20 people that I could send it to. So I filled it out. It was a quick like questionnaire. How long were you in? What ranks did you hold? Do you feel like you fully transitioned? What resources would have been helpful? Things like that. And I sent it out. And as I started coming back in, I used to be very externally validated. Like I needed external validation, but man, it was apparent that this was a problem. Like people were not transitioning out of law enforcement, no matter the reason they left, very well at all. It was medically retired people, regular retired people, people who chose to leave, somebody that got fired. But everyone had very similar thoughts after they first left. I was depressed. I was scared. I was anxious. I felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulders. Finally, I was relieved. All these different things all at once that we were never taught to process by any means. So when they're all happening at once, it's hard. Some of the suggestions were like training videos on how to leave, talking to somebody who's been there, done that, having some sort of like an academy or something like that for people. Like we had to join one to come
Mm.
in, like why wouldn't we need one to leave, type of thing. And I was like, okay, we've got a problem here and we've got a way to solve it. And so I really didn't have a plan at that point. I started showing up and talking on social media. We mentioned that earlier. People started sharing their stories. I'm like, okay. And I mean, still to this day, that was 3 years ago. we're still refining every day. The more people we talk to and the more information we get, we're like, oh, this is actually where we're going. And where we're kind of at right now is really helping guide people from the chaos and confusion our life is in, especially when you're considering leaving, to getting clarity and having confidence to take the steps to move forward.
Mm. What would you say? So even if, some of our community members aren't law enforcement, but they're going to be transitioning. They're going to get to a point in life where they got to give themselves permission to dream again and to become something different than they are.
Yeah.
What are a couple things you would tell that person to help them start that process?
Get comfortable spending time with yourself in the quiet times. Like, I know it's uncomfortable and I know it's like terrifying. I used to hate being in the quiet, and now I just did a whole 30-minute walk with nothing going on in my head. My earpods were in there to close everything off and shut out that noise. But it's in those moments that your clarity will come to you, and you'll get some direction. And then journaling. I cannot recommend journaling enough. Whatever it is, usually free write. If you need a guided journal because your mind isn't yet in a place where you can like just come up with things, and it's a gratitude journal maybe, or it's questions for you, guiding you to pull things out of you basically. Some people that doesn't work for. I do really well when I'm talking to people and they're the one pulling it out of me. That can be very helpful. So whether it's a therapist or a coach or a mentor or a friend, maybe have a set weekly meeting with a trusted friend where you talk back and forth about growth and mindset and these things that are going to get you feeling unstuck from wherever it is you currently are.
Yeah, and pick a friend that's actually doing it, right? Don't pick the same friend that's been doing the same things forever that's just wanting to keep you where you were.
Right. And it's helpful to have that person. They don't have to be super far ahead. In fact, I have found that that's almost more detrimental because you almost put them on a pedestal and they're so far ahead that you can't see that gap. So if you get somebody just one or two steps ahead, they don't have to be like running away from you. But if you're at the same level as someone, that's often hard because you're both in that same place and you don't know what it takes to get ahead and keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's like teenagers giving teenagers life advice.
Right. I mean, good for you. But yeah.
Right? You got two 14-year-olds advising each other on the meaning of life generally doesn't work out super well.
Yeah.
What, Jess, what would you say if you could look back today to 31-year-old Jess that's waking up unknown? Like, man, I don't know if I can do another day of this. What would you tell that version of yourself?
It gets better. Plain and simple. Like it gets better, but you've got to do the work.
Yeah, that's
Life
good.
isn't just handed to you ever. So you better dig in and do the work. If you're not happy with where you're at, figure it out. Dig in. There's plenty of resources out here now. Use them. Don't stay stuck. That's an excuse. You're not stuck.
That's good. Would she listen to you, or is she too stubborn?
Oh no, she was probably too stubborn. And she was probably too stubborn. But if I were telling 31-year-old Jess that, and there was this, I don't even want to say community, but it were more commonplace. Like if that had been something you saw other people doing, like it was out there, I would be more willing to listen. But when I was 31-year-old Jess, there was nobody doing this. There was nobody talking about it or reaching a hand backwards to try to help you through it.
Which I think is all the more reason your work's so important, Jess.
It's definitely, I was asked this. I was on the news back in August because I wanted to shout out Next Shift and they let me. But I told them they had asked, did you feel more sense of purpose or impact on the job or now? And I was like, hands down now. Like they're again, you're never going to know the full impact of what you're doing, but the amount of purpose and impact I feel now versus any time in my almost 10-year career, hands down, this is far more impactful and far more purposeful work. Getting to see people have their own aha moment, their own breakthrough, their own breaking free of the chains that have held us all back for so long in this career is just the most rewarding thing.
Do you enjoy total autonomy, being in charge of it?
I don't know about
I
that.
love it.
I definitely need some help. I do love the freedom that comes with it for sure. I have learned again for a whole life of not thinking I was creative. Creative ideas are where I'm at. I don't like to stop and think of all the small steps that it takes to actually accomplish things. I like to be the visionary. I like to be the one with the ideas. I'd like to be the face of like showing up and showing you, hey, come with me. Hey, I have no clue what I'm doing, but come with me. Let's learn this together and grow
Right.
forward. That's one of my favorite things in the world to do.
I gotta tell you, one of my favorite things is knowing that I can pivot directions at any moment without running through a chain of command and explaining
Amen.
things over and over.
Yeah. Yep. The bureaucracy is gone. The red tape is gone. You just do what you want.
And with that comes a responsibility, like you said, to make sure you're showing up every day and that you're disciplined to get the task done.
And I will say that's actually something I posted about the other day was a lot of these guys that are in the field still are so used to that rank and file and the command chain of command that they don't feel they have the permission to do something or
Yeah.
they don't have the permission to step all the way up to reach out to some CEO on LinkedIn or whatever it is. I'm like, no, stop wasting time down here. Stop wasting time with the bottom feeders. Like, go above them. These guys are all going to complain that nobody's listening to me and nobody's hiring me and nobody's getting back to me. Go to the person who can make a decision about you and your future. Go to them, talk to them.
Yeah,
You're
no.
responsible. Nobody else is.
I think that's a good message for life, right? Like it is our life. And the only one that's going to have regrets at the end of the day is not the people that didn't support you or held you back. It's going to be you knowing you left it in the tank.
Yep. And if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And if somebody says no to you about literally anything in life, you're not going to die. So please stop using that as an excuse. Like, move forward. You have the power to do that. And if doors keep closing in your face, then that's clear sign that that's not the path you're meant for.
Mm. That's not the door you were supposed to be at.
Nope. Pivot, pivot. Talk to somebody though. It's going to be a whole lot easier if you talk to somebody about what you've tried and they're like, "Hey, did you ever consider this?" And they're like, "Oh my God, I did not, but wow, that really makes sense." Again, those breakthroughs, the most incredible thing to witness.
Yeah, and they only happen when you put yourself in position to listen, to learn, to try new things, and you get past this idea that anything you do is being judged by everybody else.
Yep. Literally, who cares? And I know it's easier said than done, but man, when you start saying, "I don't care," you will go so much further when you don't
Yeah.
care what people think.
Oh, I love it. Jess, thank you so much for coming on the show with us this week. Where can our audience follow you and join the next shift movement that you got going on?
Yeah, so I am on both Instagram and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is far more engaging. So if you want to go over there, it's just Jessica parentheses Reed Flores. Gotta love how they do it. But I'm over there. The content is basically the same as LinkedIn or Instagram, which is underscore next shift underscore. Gotta love the way they do that. And if you want to see the whole shit show of the past 6 years or so, 7 years now, the Just Flores on Instagram as well. Scroll all the way back and just start. Just start scrolling. It'll be interesting.
Jess, thank you so much for what you're doing. Keep your voice going, keep moving forward, and just know that you are making a difference, my friend.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.